Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Your support means the world to us and helps others discover stories that share clarity and inspiration on the path of self-discovery. Thank you so much. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. You call it fate. How often do you look at your life and say, that's just how things are? Or, it happened because of the circumstances? How often do you feel like life is carrying you along, and you're just a passenger with no real say in where you're headed? Carl Jung once wrote that until a person makes the unconscious conscious, it will direct their life, and they will call it fate. But what does it actually mean to live under the rule of the unconscious? At first, it might sound abstract or far removed from everyday life. But look closer. Everything that happens in your life is, in essence, a result of what you're unaware of. Jung's idea hits hard. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. Like a nail driven into your awareness, this truth demands recognition. You're not truly free until you know what's pulling your strings from within. So, what does that mean in real life? You might keep fighting your circumstances, telling yourself that failure is just bad luck, or that your struggles are the product of unfortunate timing. But in reality, you're creating many of these patterns yourself, on a level you don't even see. Imagine your hidden beliefs and fears as anchors. You're trying to sail, to move forward, but you're stuck, without realizing that the anchors are holding you in place. You don't see them because they're buried deep. You don't recognize them, and because of that, you can't release them. Jung explained that the unconscious parts of our personality don't just sit quietly in the background. They shape our choices, our reactions, even the repetitive lessons that life throws at us. If you're unfamiliar with these parts of yourself, you won't understand why the same problems keep showing up. You won't see that you're writing your own life script, but doing it blindly. Take someone who repeatedly ends up in toxic relationships. From the outside, it looks like bad luck, just picking the wrong person again. But if you dig deeper, it's not luck at all. It's a projection of an inner conflict. That person might be carrying unconscious beliefs that actually attract unhealthy dynamics. It's like having a hidden program running in the background, selecting the wrong people, even if that's the last thing they want. So, how do you escape this trap we've come to call fate? The answer is awareness, making the unconscious conscious, understanding your reactions, your fears, your deeper motivations. Because once you see the pattern, once you realize you've been steering the ship the whole time, you can finally grab the wheel with both hands. And when you do, you won't feel afraid. You won't feel angry. You'll feel free. Free from what you didn't see, free from what quietly controlled you. That moment of clarity will be your first real taste of freedom. Because when you understand that fate is not chance but a result of your inner programming, everything changes. You stop walking paths chosen for you. You begin walking your own. Chapter 2. Mirrors and Projections. Imagine the entire world as a mirror, not one that only reflects your face, but one that shows your inner world, your fears, your desires, your unresolved emotions. What you notice in others often reveals what you carry within yourself. This is what we call projection. Every time you judge someone, criticize them, or feel deeply irritated by their behavior, you're actually catching a glimpse of your own inner state. Carl Jung believed that projection is a defense mechanism, one the unconscious uses to avoid facing uncomfortable truths about ourselves. When there's a part of you that you don't want to accept, your mind places it out there, onto someone else. You might feel like others are trying to control your life, that they're the ones dictating your actions. But more often than not, it's your own fear and expectations being projected onto them. Imagine meeting someone who acts aggressively. Instinctively, you might think, they're trying to dominate me. They're pushing me around. But if you pause and really observe, you may realize that their aggression is triggering your fear of confrontation. They're not creating that fear. You are. You're projecting it onto them because it already lives inside you. The question is, how do you respond to your projections? Most of us react with anger, resentment, or defensiveness. We blame others for making us feel small, anxious, or controlled. But the truth is, all of those emotions are born inside us. The other person is just the trigger, not the cause. Jung said, "You see only what you are ready to see." In other words, your view of the world isn't objective. You don't see people as they truly are. You see them through the lens of your own unresolved conflicts and hidden beliefs. When you understand that the world isn't acting on you, but is instead reflecting you, something shifts. You begin to realize that real change doesn't come from trying to control others. It comes from seeing yourself clearly. Freedom doesn't come through resistance. It comes from dissolving your projections. The moment you stop placing your own inner fears onto others, the need to defend yourself begins to fade. You stop feeling like a victim of outside forces. You no longer search for someone to blame. Instead, you look within. And that's where true liberation begins. Rather than blaming the world for your pain, you begin to see people as they are, not as shadows of your own wounds. You stop mistaking your fears for threats. You stop seeing enemies where there are none. And slowly, you learn to live without needing the world to reflect back what you don't want to face in yourself. This doesn't mean the world around you changes overnight, but you do. Your perception shifts. You begin to see people as they are, without the fog of projection. And with that comes a quiet freedom. You feel less controlled, less reactive. You begin to adapt without abandoning yourself. The moment you start seeing the world through the lens of awareness, you step out of the victim role. You become the one who chooses how to respond. That choice is the key to inner freedom. Because now you understand. Everything you see in others is showing you something about yourself. And once you know that, you're no longer at the mercy of your circumstances. You take back the power to choose how you see and who you are. Chapter 3. Your prisoner and your jailer. Have you ever asked yourself which parts of your personality you hide from others and why? Why do you avoid the sides of yourself that you believe don't fit the image of a good person? That hidden part is your shadow. It's not something outside of you. It's a part of you that you've refused to acknowledge. And yet, it's precisely this shadow, buried deep in your unconscious, that quietly controls so much of your life. Carl Jung said that everything we suppress becomes part of the shadow. It includes the feelings, desires, and personality traits we reject because they don't match the version of ourselves we want to present to the world. But suppressing these qualities doesn't make them disappear. They simply go underground. And the more we ignore them, the more power they have over us, acting from the dark without our awareness. Think about the times you've experienced sudden outbursts of anger, jealousy, fear, or shame. These emotions often don't come from nowhere. They're the voice of your shadow. We tell ourselves, "That's not who I am," and try to push these feelings away. But in doing so, we don't get rid of them. We just lose control over how and when they appear. The shadow is not your enemy, though it's often perceived that way. In reality, it's a reservoir of hidden strength, forgotten parts of your potential, and qualities you've neglected or denied. It can block your personal growth, but it can also unlock it if you learn how to face it. The shadow is like a prisoner locked in the basement of your mind. But if you choose to see it clearly, it can become your ally. It can lead you to talents, instincts, and emotional depth you've long buried. In those forgotten parts lies your wholeness and your freedom. Jung emphasized that we shouldn't fight the shadow, but rather integrate it. Accepting and embracing the shadow allows us to become more complete. When you become conscious of your weaknesses, fears, and so-called flaws, you loosen their grip on your life. You stop being driven by what you refuse to see and begin to understand, manage, and even use those forces as part of your growth. What does this look like in real life? When you accept your shadow, you stop feeling ashamed of your vulnerabilities. You stop hiding your insecurities. You begin to see that these parts of you are not flaws. They're integral parts of your path to authenticity. And once you allow those parts to become part of your identity, you're no longer imprisoned by them. You stop living in fear of being found out. You stop apologizing for being imperfect. You become free to be yourself, fully and unapologetically. Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror, not seeing only your light, but also your darkness. and not turning away. Instead, you accept what you see. You understand that it's by acknowledging these rejected parts that you become whole. This is what it means to take the path toward true inner freedom. Chapter 4. The Persona. Have you ever wondered who you really are and who you are in the eyes of others? The image you create of yourself often differs from your true essence. This is your persona, the social mask you wear to meet the expectations of those around you. We all wear this mask because it helps us adapt to society. But often, it becomes so tight that we begin to forget there is someone else underneath it, someone who is real. Carl Jung said that the persona is a necessary part of our existence because it helps us interact with society. But he also emphasized that the persona becomes problematic when we start to identify with it. We begin to think that we are not our true selves, but the roles we play for others. And this is where the real trap begins. The persona helps us gain acceptance, creating the illusion of social harmony. We wear it to be successful, to be loved, to fulfill our role in society. But what happens when we lose connection with who we truly are? We become prisoners of our own image. We stop being free because we no longer understand where our true identity ends and the role we are playing begins. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine someone who always plays the role of a successful businessman, someone who cannot afford to be vulnerable because that's what society expects. They may forget who they really are, what they like, what they feel, what matters to them. All they see is their image, their status. They lose touch with themselves because, in the pursuit of external approval, they forget the true needs of their soul. Such examples are common. People who outwardly appear happy and successful, but feel empty inside. We often start to identify ourselves with our persona without realizing how it restricts our freedom. The persona becomes too heavy, and we lose ourselves in the process. But what happens when we begin to realize that the persona is just a role we play, not our true essence? We start to reconnect with ourselves. We understand that, despite all the social roles, we are something much greater. We become able to be vulnerable, to be honest with ourselves and others. Liberation from the persona does not mean abandoning social roles. It means realizing that behind the role, there is you. And most importantly, you understand that you can be real, even if it doesn't always meet the expectations of others. You can be yourself, and that is what gives you freedom. Thus, when you become aware of your persona, you stop fearing it. You stop thinking of it as your essence. You realize that it is just one of many roles you play in life, and that your true self is not confined by these images. This is liberation from the pressure of the outside world and the acceptance that you can be yourself. Chapter 5. The Imposter Syndrome. Have you ever felt that you don't deserve what you have? That your achievements are just a fluke and you've simply been lucky to be in the right place at the right time? Or perhaps you fear that one day others will realize you're not as competent as you appear to be. If you've recognized yourself in these descriptions, you are not alone. This phenomenon is called imposter syndrome, and it has nothing to do with your actual accomplishments. Its roots lie deep in the unconscious, and it is precisely this syndrome that deprives us of the freedom to be ourselves. Imposter syndrome is not just insecurity. It's the inner voice that constantly whispers, "You're not good enough. You're a fraud. None of this is real." And even if you receive recognition, praise, or success, you don't believe it. Because inside you lives a part that refuses to accept your worth. Jung would say that this is a projection of the shadow onto ourselves. We refuse to see the talent, strength, and light within us because they contradict our deep-seated self-esteem, which has been shaped over the years, through trauma, through the words of others, through experiences where we were overlooked. We don't believe we can be worthy because, unconsciously, we think of ourselves as not enough. The inner critic becomes the jailer, and we become prisoners of our own minds. The paradox is that the more you achieve, the stronger your anxiety becomes. With every success, the fear of being exposed grows. You bury yourself deeper in work, trying to be perfect, to prove to yourself and others that you are worthy. But instead of joy, all you feel is burnout. And this is where the wisdom of Jung becomes crucial. Freedom begins with the awareness of the unconscious. Until you recognize who it is inside you saying, "You're not worthy," you won't be able to break free from this cage. But once you notice this voice and ask yourself, "Who is doubting me right now?" you reclaim your power. Jung emphasized that the path to wholeness is a path toward accepting our complexity. You can be talented and occasionally insecure. You can make mistakes and still be intelligent. You can be vulnerable and still be worthy. These are not opposites. They are parts of a single, living personality. Once you start acknowledging your contributions, your efforts, your abilities, you begin to feel freedom. Not the freedom that comes from medals, diplomas, or approval, but the internal freedom to be who you are without needing to prove to anyone that you deserve it. And this sense of liberation frees you not only from imposter syndrome, but also from the endless chase for external validation. You no longer need recognition to believe in yourself, because now you know your worth is not in the words of others, but in your willingness to be yourself. Chapter 6. Invisible Scripts You Live By. Have you ever wondered why, at certain moments in life, you react as if something ancient, powerful, and inevitable within you is triggered? Why do you sometimes seem to follow a pattern that feels as if it's already been written, even though you never planned it? The answer lies in archetypes, which, according to Jung, reside in the collective unconscious of every person. Archetypes are universal psychic structures, primordial images passed down through generations. They are like invisible directors of a play, in which you are the actor, having forgotten that you yourself wrote the script. The mother, the hero, the elder, the sage, the seeker, the martyr, the ruler, these and other archetypes silently shape how we perceive the world, ourselves, and others. Jung argued that as long as an archetype operates unconsciously, a person remains its hostage. For example, a man captured by the hero archetype may spend his life fighting, overcoming, and conquering, but not realize that what drives him is not his true desire, but the need to fulfill the role that's been written inside him. A woman driven by the mother archetype may forget her own desires, dissolving entirely into care for others, even when it destroys her. When we are unaware of an archetype, it becomes fate. It dictates not only the roles we play, but also the feelings we experience: shame, guilt, pride, fear. It makes us feel that we must be someone to fit in, with our family, society, or culture. But once we begin to see that this is just one possible role, a gap opens up, a space where we can choose. Jung didn't suggest we eliminate archetypes. On the contrary, he believed they were necessary because they provide structure, a symbolic language, and a connection to humanity. But freedom begins at the moment when you recognize an archetype and stop being its puppet. You become free when you realize that right now, for example, the archetype of the victim is speaking through you, and you choose not to follow it. Or, conversely, you activate the archetype of the creator when you take responsibility for your own life. Archetypes can be a prison, but they can also be a tool of power if you take control into your own hands. It's like stepping outside the script. You can still use the images, draw inspiration from myths, see yourself as the hero, the teacher, the warrior, or the lover. But you know that this is not the whole of you. You are more than the archetype. You are the one who can choose who to be in every moment of your life. Jung called this process individuation, the realization of the authentic self through awareness of your internal forces, images, and shadows. Understanding archetypes is one of the keys to this path. Until you realize who is playing inside you, you will act according to someone else's script. But once you recognize the voice, you can say, "Thank you, I know you, but now I choose for myself." Chapter 7. Individuation, the path to freedom. The essence of the path to inner freedom, according to Jung, lies in one word: individuation. This is not just a beautiful philosophical term. It is a living, difficult, captivating process. It is a return to yourself, not to the mask, not to the role, not to others' expectations, but to your deep self. Jung understood that a person cannot be free until they know who they are, because in ignorance of ourselves, we will always be subjugated to archetypes, projections, shadows, fears, traumas, and the voices of others. Individuation is the path where we gradually bring all parts of ourselves together into a whole. We do not reject, suppress, or destroy. Instead, we accept and integrate. You cannot truly be yourself if you deny your shadow, or if your life is just the persona, convenient for the world but detached from your inner needs. Or if you are driven by the archetype of the hero, but you do not understand why you are always compelled to overcome something. Or if the creator lives within you, but you are afraid to acknowledge it, because your family always valued stability over inspiration. Individuation is a dialogue with all your inner aspects. It's when you are able to hear your shadow and not be afraid, when you know which mask you wear and why, when you recognize archetypes and do not let them control you from the shadows, when you do not live only as son, worker, man, leader, but allow yourself to be all of these and something more, alive, complex, authentic. Jung emphasized that individuation is not an achievement, a status, or a medal. It is a lifelong process. It is a journey in which you do not become someone new, but return to yourself, as if remembering who you were before you began to conform. So, what do you find on this path? Wholeness. This does not mean perfection. It means you no longer fight with yourself. You know your weaknesses, and you are not ashamed of them. You recognize your strengths, and you do not need external validation. You are able to be vulnerable, and do not see it as weakness. You feel an inner strength because you know who you are. It is only from this wholeness that true freedom is born. Not the kind where you loudly proclaim, "I answer to no one," but the kind where you peacefully live in accordance with yourself, even if the whole world around you demands otherwise. You are no longer guided by fear. You are no longer guided by the persona. You are no longer guided by expectations. You are guided by yourself. Jung said, "You become who you have always been, but never realized." This is the mystery of liberation, not in destroying yourself, but in deeply recognizing who you are. Chapter 8. The Inner Freedom. You've reached the finale. Behind you lie the unconscious, projections, the persona, the shadow, archetypes, the imposter syndrome, and the path of individuation. But what now? What does it mean to be free in a world full of pressure, expectations, and voices? Carl Jung did not suggest fleeing from the world. He didn't teach us to escape to the mountains or reject society. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And in that phrase lies the essence. Freedom is not in resistance, but in awareness. Most people imagine freedom as something external: quitting a job, ending a relationship, moving, changing their appearance, or changing their name. But if you don't know who is making these changes, you're just altering the scenery, remaining bound inside. True freedom doesn't start with revolution. It starts with honesty toward yourself. It's the silence in which you hear your inner voice. It's the ability to say no, not because you want to fight, but because you cannot betray yourself. It's the skill to be yourself, even when no one supports you. It's the choice to walk your own path, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Freedom is peace. It's not the absence of fear, but the knowledge of where it comes from. It's not the rejection of pain, but the understanding of what it teaches. It's not perfectionism, but allowing yourself to be alive and imperfect. It's the ability to let go of control and still stay true to yourself. You are free when you can say, "I know who I am. I accept that both light and darkness live within me. I no longer need validation because I see myself." Jung called this inner process the sacred work of each person. It is not the path of the crowd, not quick success, not the path of likes and applause. It's a slow awakening. But in that awakening lies your strength. Liberation does not come from the outside. It happens when you stop fighting and begin to look within. Not to judge, but to understand. Not to fix, but to accept. The world will not become perfect. People will still demand. Society will still shape. Fears will still return. But if there is inner support, if you've walked the path to yourself, you will stand firm. Not aggressively, not arrogantly, but peacefully, with dignity. You are freedom, because you are aware. You have to know. No one and nothing can control you when you know who you are.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like if this video resonated with you. Thank you for being with us and for listening till the end. There's so much more here that we hope will inspire and motivate you. With gratitude, until next time.